Howdy, hey, party people. What are we doing today? We are doing a little bit of some stream events. I didn't get the word out. Oh, so we're gonna do a little bit of maintenance here today. We're gonna get this webcam dialed in a little bit more. Also working on finding a better seating situation. And yes, if I were a very big professional big boy streamer, I would have done this before. But it's New Year's. That looks good, right? A little out of control. Then just a smidge, just a wee smidge. Saturation up a little, just a little. Sharpness, so sharp. Gotta go back to our chroma key because my forehead is green. Sometimes it's green. I mean, you know, like depending on like what I've eaten that day, mostly. want to mess with the contrast in here. Already messing with the camera set. But let's see. That back on. Then I can select a color. Eye drop. My handy dandy little design. Everyone's having a good Friday. 8-7. Okay. 5-8. Oh. Go. Looking pretty good. Grab that similarity. Then I think all we gotta do is parse. Looking pretty darn close. That's getting pretty darn close. I have anything to say about it. Double. That's a post. Married. Perfect. Right. Seat up a little. Woo! There we go. All right. Look at us being like a professional streamer or something. My goodness. Oh, let's keep on. Whoops. I want to shrink my smidge. Go, get that mic in the corner. Then got this space not getting cut out there. Not gonna move with it? No, it's not. Yep. Looks even worse on both. Hold. Answer. That good? No. What's that? Those of you who are tuning in right now are the committed folks. You're the ones. We're here to support someone you care about. I am very grateful because no one in their right mind wants to see this. Not for today. Not even close. And all right, I think we'll call that good enough for today. Then, in between streams, go ahead and make some adjustments. But this will be good enough for now. Woo! All right. Boost in production value. But by far, the most important thing has yet to make its appearance. See if I can we have one more very, very part of the stream, which I think is going to be the most important thing we've ever done. gotta make it railway. Okay. On. Hold. 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 For those of you who may not be someone who is patiently waiting, thank you for your patience in any case. We are going to be diving into some really exciting incremental games today. I don't know how long we're going to be playing, but we're going to be analyzing every single step of the way. And it's going to be a very, very, very good time. If I can get this last thing up. Let's see here. There. Game. Incremental games are something that has been near and dear to my heart. Oh, hi! Oh, man, my chat. The channel's chat. We want to see how the sausage is made. Call it morbid curiosity. Oh, dear. We're going to play a possibly couple of games today. Depends on how much time we actually spend streaming. But this first one I learned about through Wanderbots. And boy, has it kind of lit a bit of a fire under me. Got that pulled up. Great. Here we go. And I need to pull up whiteboard. Go. Orb of Creation. Orb of Creation is a delightful little experience. Now the problem is my mouse cursor has disappeared. Why has my mouse cursor completely disappeared? Excuse me. Hello? Mouse cursor? Claw? Let's see here. That's not good. Hold on. I may need to reboot or something. Let me try something real quick. Hey, that worked. Hot dog. Get Orb of Creation back up. Hopefully that doesn't nuke my mouse cursor again. Right. There we go. Boop. Go. Right. Delightful. Let's dive in. So, we're going to start with a brand new game. Brand new save slot. I have done some of this. I have done some Orb of Creation already. But that was kind of a totally different experience. What we have today is the beta. And from what I understand, the beta is incredibly different. So I'm going to crank back up volume the music. Because, frankly, the music in this game is kind of a banger. It's kind of great. We're going to be doing some analysis of... incremental games, and I'm really excited about this. We've done some analysis of platforming and of storytelling, and now we're going to dive into incrementals. I've been playing a lot of incrementals for the past few years. Some for a long time, some for a small amount of time. I, jumped on the initial cookie clicker hype train. I was really big into hero clicker for a long time, about a decade ago. And I've kind of been going back and forth on them. Honestly, having sometimes an unhealthy relationship with idle games. They kind of tethered me really heavily to a screen that I really needed to keep checking, right? And I think that is a danger inherent to the design of that genre. It can be something addictive. I'm going to actually bring over our Octalysis framework to start this off with. Because follow myself again. We look at the Octalysis framework and we kind of bring an incremental just by its very nature into it. What do we get? Pretty much nothing on social influence inherently. We get a pretty good amount of empowerment, like pretty good, just by virtue of making numbers go up. Feel good, feel pretty accomplished. Like, wow, not only can I make all this stuff, empowerment, but also look how far I've come, accomplishment. If someone else were to start off, they'd be clicking this cookie for one cookie at a time, and I'm making like 300 billion e to the 30 seconds amounts, right? Meaning is typically 0, right? There's very rarely a game in the incremental genre that really has any sort of meaning. And then ownership, you get a little bit, but really not a ton. There's usually not a lot of customization, not a lot of fine tuning. It's kind of just buying upgrades as you can. But then scarcity is actually fairly high. Even though there's an unlimited amount of resource, you're always resource capped, right? And the next upgrade always seems like some unfathomably large number. Just almost will never be able to reach. But the fact that you do at points boosts that empowerment really heavily. And the unpredictability is kind of high too. Even though it's all mathematical, typically, there's usually not a lot of randomness to it. Unpredictability for me was in how I spent my time. Because I never really knew how much was going to be waiting for me back in an incremental game when I had been gone for a little while. And my brain hooked into that hard. It was bad. Where I would be checking it constantly, trying to get that next upgrade, not wanting to miss out, right? Avoidance. I don't want to waste time because each upgrade so vastly changes how quickly you get things. If you spend more time than necessary on any one stage of the game, you are losing time, and that's time that could have been spent being productive, accomplishing things, being empowered, right? And it was very unhealthy for me. So I've jumped off a lot on these. Rodrigo over on Twitch. Rodrigo Sigilia Otravesa. Beginner Game Dev here. Could you share? First off, I apologize for how I pronounced your name. Beginner Game Dev here. Could you share what is this model you're using, or just a rant about its value? I kind of understand the graph and the multiple facets, but why those characteristics? Is there other analysis models? Yeah, there's. Okay, so this comes from Yukai Chow. Let me bring this up here. Yukai Chow is a bit of a pioneer in the gamification field, and it's someone that I leverage quite heavily in my gamification design contract work. When I help organizations gamify their products, usually what they tend to think of is, oh, I want achievements, I want leaderboards. Yukai Chow, you got it pretty close. Let me put the name in chat, and it's Octalysis. So the reason why I like this one is because it hits a lot more than that, right? Social influence like leaderboards, trophies, that sort of stuff fall into that, but we miss all this other stuff. So there are gamification frameworks to explore. In fact, I'm reading a couple of different books on there right now. I've got Rules of Play by Katie Salen and Eric Zimmerman, which is a really great, just generic ludology textbook. Ludology being the study of game design. And I'll put these in chat too, by Katie Salen and Eric Zimmerman. And then I've also got this one I haven't even began to touch yet. Gamification for Product Excellence. This is a new one. Rules of Play is early 2000s, I think. Gamification for Product Excellence by Mike Hizzy and Brett Wardle. Copying all the names, find them later. Yeah, right on. Absolutely. I really like the Octalysis framework. It's you know, as the saying goes, all models are wrong, but some are useful. And I find this one to be pretty useful most of the time. So I like the idea of frameworks because they keep things front and center for me. I have really bad ADHD brain, which can be really powerful in sometimes, but I also need to understand that it causes problems in others. And this is something that I need, which is I need to have things visual. I need to have them in front of me or I just lose it. My brain completely skips past it. And so having something like this reminds me, oh, okay, these are the things. So to kind of go into what each of these different parts of it signify, epic meaning is, you know, in Lord of the Rings, it's the carrying of the ring up the mountain, right? It's banish all evil, get rid of Sauron, right? That's a very high epic meaning. High epic meaning would be, you know, the way we conceptualize like World War II. It is the Allies, and this is even conveyed in the names that have gone down in history, Allies versus the Axis, right? One of those is very friendly, one of those is not. The Allies were trying to stop genocide. They were very actively in a good versus evil struggle, a very easy model. That's epic meaning. Something that has not epic meaning is like cookie clicker, right? Like a cookie, try to get more cookies. That is not a very epic meaning, right? I have some understanding of game design by the act of doing. I played RPGs for all my life, so making fun adventures and modding board games have been a source of fun, but I would love to get some real scientific knowledge, both in neuroscience of the reward mechanisms of the brain. Here I rely on Andrew Huberman, and now I want stuff on games specifically. I love Cookie Clicker. Yeah, no, Cookie Clicker's great, right? It's, like I said, there's a lot of inherent value in just the genre, and Cookie Clicker was a major pioneer of it. But I hear you on wanting to get more into the neuroscience of the reward mechanisms and stuff, and how we experience things. That's what I've done for the last decade, working as a product and user experience designer in complex, heavily regulated industries, in global and tiny companies, helping some of the biggest problems, like how do we get medications to people in healthcare? How do we get people back into their homes after a hurricane swipes through Florida and gets rid of all these things? How do we keep people safe in cybersecurity? These are all areas where having that understanding of how do people's brains work, how do humans interact with technology, really make a very big difference. So I hear you on that. Have you read a really basic one? You may have read this one already. Is The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman? I'll put that one in the chat as well. The Design of Everything is by Don Norman. That's a wonderful one. Let's see if I can find the author here, because I don't remember it off the top of my head. Okay. It's Badass Making Users Awesome by Kathy Sierra. That's a very light read that kind of talks a lot of these sorts of things. It's really fascinating. I love Badass. She talks about fascinating concepts of how people learn. She talks about how I never read anything on the topic yet. Well, great. Well, this is a massive reading list. I have the habit of reading a ton of books yearly, so I'll try to read all these. They say, well, hey, best of luck. If you end up reading them, I'd love to know what you get out of them. I would get a lot of value hearing what other people learn from approaching it from different angles. So, like in Badass, she talks about these really two fascinating examples of during World War II, how do they help individuals gain certain skill sets very rapidly? She talks about two of those situations. One of them was, how do you determine the sex of a baby chick, because there was something about like feeding it differently that would result in a greater yield of chickens. But it's kind of impossible to determine the sex of a chick. But they found that certain people could do it with a much higher success rate than other people could. And then they started looking at how do you identify which airplane is flying overhead, especially at night for bombing raids and stuff? World War II. And they said, again, almost impossible, but some people could do it at a higher rate than others. She goes into how they kind of broke down how they figured this out and how they propagated it out. And it's really fascinating and frustratingly vague by necessity. You'll understand that completely when you read it. But it's a real fascinating book. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Oh, right on. Thank you. After reading the books, I will surely reach out to you then. I would love that. Yeah, absolutely. As well, feel free to jump on the Discord if you like. We have an entire channel dedicated to books and what we're all learning. All researching and trying to learn how to make better games to improve the human condition. So, right on. Very excited. So yeah, to return to the Octalysis framework real quick, epic meaning it's that narrative, what I'm doing actually matters. Empowerment is I can actually act on it. I have capability to do this thing. So a high empowerment game, you know, I think like Dark Souls. Most of that is skill-based. And then you've got on the very other end, you've got something like, forgive me, Cookie Clicker. And I know I put empowerment high earlier. It's a little complicated. I think empowerment is high and low for an incremental game like that because there's very few decisions you make. You don't really plan and adjust, but you do also click buttons and make things go big. So it's a little bit of a mix. Join Discord. Right on. Awesome. Glad to have you here. Welcome on in. And then social influence is, how does this matter in relation to other humans? So a really common interpretation of social influence is there's a marathon service, a software service called Conqueror. And the idea is people want to run marathons, but it's kind of a lot to do all at once. Let's make asynchronous marathons. So you can run your marathon and there are these absurd distances, you know, like running across the globe sort of stuff. But you just plot away at it steadily. There's a little map that shows your progress on it, like you are here. But then you see other pictures of like your friend's group is right here further along and your other friend is a little bit behind you. That's social influence, right? It's how you exist in relation to others that pushes you forward. People have talked a lot about the Spotify yearly wrap-up thing, which now every other company is copying. And the theory of why it's been so insanely popular is that social influence. Look at this stuff. Look at me. I am cool. I am special. Spotify knows this. And I want to see what's new and interesting with you. I have opinion about this empowerment. Some clickers have obvious best strategies, but others like Clicker Heroes have several builds. Some that you need auto clickers and others that reward clicking as possible. It's true. Absolutely. And that's one thing I'm really curious to look at with Orb of Creation, because it's one of these ones in a new kind of string of incremental games that is separating idle from incremental and saying these are actually two different genres. That the assumption was they were part and parcel, but we believe they're not different. And I'm really curious to see what this new beta version is, analyze everything about it. Unpredictability is fairly simple. It's the casino machine, right? You never know what you're going to get. Avoidance, you try and avoid loss avoidance, right? You would rather not lose $5 than have a chance to gain $20, right? It's that psychological. Scarcity, how abundant is this? Like if we are all trying to pick bananas, but there are only 3 bananas and 500 people, all of a sudden scarcity is very high. That is going to drive this way up. We are much more engaged. There is inherent drama associated. Ownership is like, how much of this is mine? A really good example of this back in the day, if you were around for this and you're here, I applaud your bravery because that means you're older than a high schooler. But back in the day, MySpace, one of the this was pre-Facebook. MySpace, for those of you who are unaware, was the pre-Facebook Facebook. And a big part about MySpace was making everything tailored to yourself, right? It was, you could change the colors, the backgrounds, the music that would automatically play, all of the animated GIFs that would be jumping around as soon as people jumped on, all that stuff. It was yours, right? You owned it. So a good example of this in games is like transmogrifying your gear. Sudden you have your visual ownership. This is what my character is. If you ever played City of Heroes or City of Villains back in the day, they hit ownership very hard in a really powerful way that has not really been copied yet. I'm 31 years old, right? Never had MySpace, never have been a great social media user. Yeah, no, I hear. I mean, MySpace was a little bit ahead of me as well, and I'm a little bit older than yourself. So I definitely get that. And then accomplishment is, you know, can we actually measure or feel we have done something? Because you can feel very empowered, but if you don't feel that you've really done anything with that empowerment, it fall a little flat. We were talking about this just the other day when we were analyzing Thomas Was Alone. And Thomas has a moment. Let me go back to my line notes here. Thomas has a moment, right, in level 6, where he says that he felt he was getting better, but he wasn't entirely sure, right? And that messy middle of, which is a very human thing, where you are practicing something, you're getting better at it, but you haven't gone far enough to be able to see what your journey really is. That's the feeling of accomplishment that is missing. But when you hit those milestones, and that's why we love like round numbers, and we love these milestones, which like really spending 10 years married isn't not really any different or less impressive than 11 years. In fact, it's objectively less impressive than 11 years. But how many times you hear people talking about their 11-year wedding anniversary? You don't. It's always the 10-year, right? Because it feels like an accomplishment. So, that's the kind of basic idea. And I'm really, really, really excited to dive into this today. I think it's going to be really neat. So we're going to do this the same way we did Thomas Was Alone, which is just starting from the very beginning. We're going to analyze everything that we see. Everything that we see. We're going to take a look. So let's jump on in. We're going to start with this title screen. First off, the music, gotta say, it's just a banger. I love this music. This could be totally subjective, but man, do I love this music. I love good chip tunes. The feeling is very, what's the word I'm looking for? Not spectral, not ethereal, cosmic, right? It also feels bouncy and progressive, like it's moving somewhere, right? Which ties into that incremental sort of approach. But it's also low-key enough that it doesn't take center stage. And it doesn't introduce too much conflict, right? Not too much conflict. Because if you have some orchestral, you know, big blast of dramatic right? Like, all of a sudden, people are gonna be freaking out, and you might start to think, oh my gosh, I'm gonna like miss something, right? I need to be aware. They start getting scared, and as we talked about with Thomas Was Alone, we need to be very responsible with the emotions that we solicit in people. We need to say, if you're going to do this, we're also going to help them feel safe about it. In most instances, of course, art is always, you know, everything, but it can be anything. In general, as a good principle, I want to do that responsibly. So this being laid back, low key, but animated enough to carry you forward is a very tricky balance, frankly. It's tough, and I'm very impressed with whoever did this. So obviously this is also an early access game, right? So anything that I say here, any critique, is purely based on the state that it is in and has nothing to reflect on Marble. I'm sure that they're a phenomenal developer. They have made a game that is infinitely more successful than anything that I have made, which is nothing yet. So I don't mean to say they're terrible and I'm great. This is just the artistic process of critique so that we can understand it. And then we can deconstruct it into its individual components and what that is doing to our human minds, psyches, and emotions, so that we can then understand those principles, take them into other circumstances, and reapply them. So really, critique is a system of flattery, because it's saying your thing is valuable enough that I want to make it a part of me. So once again, this is not to say anything negative about Orb of Creation at all. It is to say I respect it, value it. I think there are good things about it that deserve to be other places too, and I want to learn what them. The UI, first off, it's feeling pretty cramped, right? We've got quite a lot. If we break this down into a wireframe, we have this really big settings icon. We've got our title over here. I know a lot of this is just because of the resolution that I happen to be on, but this is a part of good product design, which is accounting for all of these breakpoints. We've got a little bit of text up here, that early access build stuff, which is pretty high contrast. It's a little distracting. We have another big icon for the Discord over here, and then an even bigger made by Marple thing. And I think that's cute to like have that self-portrait in there in a sense. I think that's kind of cute. It kind of brings that indie story to the individual, and that can be a valuable thing. Right? This is not necessarily a bad thing. It can as well bring it a little bit closer towards that amateur indie side. So you would probably never see this in a AAA development, right? Of course, because there's a million people working on it. But the adding of yourself as the human into the art in such a transparent, fourth wall breaking manner tends to skew that perception. So, which can be great. A lot of people love to support indie games to support their creators. And so that may be accomplishing exactly what it's supposed to, especially that with love part down there, right? It wouldn't surprise me if a lot of the people who are buying this see that and say, oh, that's nice. It's almost like a little hug from the person who made the game, right? See it. And then for me, my eye goes next to this really big block over here, where we've got a whole bunch of buttons and save slots and export save and import and delete, a big red delete button. Scary. Boop. Big red delete button saying, don't touch this, but I'm going to put it right on the home screen. This is dangerous. Don't touch it. It's one of the first things you see, but don't touch it. One big problem here is we have this tangent right here, this visual tangent right there, the corner between this save slot box and the title. Once again, I'm sure that's just because I'm playing like at a windowed resolution that's a little bit smaller. Still, that is a part of game design. Good product design. It's accounting for those breaks. Okay. And then, finally, I get to the actual start of the game, which is this text here. Big flashing button. Then we have a red button underneath it that's disabled. Or at least it looks disabled. Maybe it's not disabled. So, areas of concern for me. We have this setting icon that is huge. Takes up a ton of space. We have the Discord icon. Once again, takes up a ton of space. We have the early access build. Very distracting. Got this area over here of the saves, which takes up a ton of real estate and clashes with the title. And then the part where the game actually starts, this text is one of the last things that I noticed. So if I were to go into this and look at how do we maybe refactor this to put the emphasis where I am assuming the game creator wants it. Something like this. We have big title, enlarge it even more, big text, introducing the player, and a big button. And it probably wouldn't say continue. It would be like the first action you were meant to take as the game. Whether that's like earn a mana or gain a cookie, right? Mine, or make it a graphical representation, right? I would definitely put quit in like the upper left. Some sort of quit icon. Move your settings up here and your Discord way smaller. And you can even have your made by Marple somewhere, you know, not drawn to scale. Ideally, this would be kind of like down here or something. That's the idea. Get it a little bit out of the way, or maybe move it up here or something. And that's all I would have. I'd totally eliminate the save slot stuff if we can detect that there are no active save slots. And then, if this is not the first time someone is coming in, now we've detected what people are doing, and we can have our save slot information. We can say continue, and then we can say like save slot 1 so that we know which one it is. Then save slot 1 can be clickable. That takes you out to a modal that has all of that save information. Now we're not getting this big scary delete button before we've even done anything. But what happens if I even click it? I don't know. I don't know if I did anything that mattered there. I can't click it anymore, so apparently there was a save. I don't know what it would be, though. I don't know. So, essentially treating this part as its own experience. That would be my hypothesis. So that would get us a lot further in the direction that we're looking. Let's dive in. Also, sorry. Let's not dive in. Let's return to the main menu. That text. Let's talk about that text. Wake, dark, only thing in front of you. I liked it a lot. I think it could be better, for sure. Like, we look at how brilliant Thomas Was Alone's introduction was. Clearly, that's doing a lot of things that are not happening here. But there are some really good things that are happening. First off, it's giving us meaning. Right? There's epic meaning. It is enhanced because now there's a mystery. This isn't just clicking a cookie. This is making a dark void. It's a glowing orb. We don't know anything about that. That mystery pulls us in. So meaning through mystery. It also has the promise of additional narrative later on. Additional narrative and meaning. That idea of a mystery as well, being central to the part of the game, kind of implies that we're going to be building out our empowerment and accomplishments. And we can kind of get a little bit of a preview in what direction, right? Before you even see the UI for the game, you are getting that understanding of what the game is. This is going to be a game of discovery. It's going to be a game of strangeness. And this is going to be a game of uncovering mysteries of the universe, right? That's enhanced by that star background. That star background, first off, it's a very nice, pleasing visual thing. That little bit of movement draws us in a little bit. That pulls our eye down over to here to the start and over here to Marple, so very clever in that regard. But it also has a lot of that cosmicness, right? Dive in. Start off with nothing. We have this. Alright, so I can't actually tell what that pattern, that tessellated pattern is. kind of looks to me, reminds me, here's the Rorschach test for you. Kind of reminds me of nebulas, right? Reinforcing that cosmic sort of theme, but it's also highly structured, so it kind of feels going to be that feeling of cosmicness, but organization. We're going to bring organization to the matter. And as well, the direction, right? Before the stars were going that way, now the nebulas are going this way. Nebulas are drawing your eye up over to the upgrades. You can see here now we have infuse orb. I have all these buttons to click on. So first off, my eyes go to this mana ball because it was moving. Again, movement. See that we've charged up mana and we have a maximum mana. We make a new section here for in-game observation. We have maximums, which is very rare in clicker games, right? In incremental games like Cookie Clicker, there's no such thing as being maxed out on a resource. This is new. It's different. This is saying this is not the kind of game you leave running in the background for 3 weeks, then come back to and buy some upgrades. Can't. Like I've already been losing time by it getting maxed out. And in a way, for me, that's incredibly freeing in relation to what I said earlier at the start of the stream, that feeling of always needing to be accomplishing. So max levels break accomplishment tendency. Already, I feel way safer in this. Psychologically, I can take a breath. Go, oh, all right. This is a game that I sit down to play, and that isn't going to end up playing. We've got our settings up here. You'll notice that it's a lot smaller than it was on the home screen. We've got this glowing person. What that is, got it. Player. Attributes and tips. Now we have all these tips I can scroll through and read. I'm never going to read that to start off with. I've gone through this before. We have got this magic thing here. I don't even know what that means. I kind of like skip over it. And I come over here to the upgrades. As well, I kind of notice these shadow boxes down here, and I don't really know what all that is. I see this, and I see, oh, okay, action multiplier, so we can click on something a bunch of times with a click. Got a search, I don't know what that is. We got an event log, I don't know what that is. We've got, I think this is like a Google Play icon sort of thing. So if I click on that, I'm expecting to be taken to some network or something, but no, it's just key bindings. I think a lot of these could be, could do with some progressive disclosure. For example, the keybinds, 100% could go under settings. I'm sure that there are reasons why it's not, probably from an engine standpoint. I get that, but also as a consumer of the product, like that's what I would expect. I would expect it to go into the settings. Better if it was a cog for settings. Yeah, right? Like it could go live under there. Conceptually, from an information architecture standpoint, absolutely. Absolutely. And then we've got event log, probably could also be progressive disclosure, where like that doesn't even show up until there are events to display, so that your opening UI is super clean and inviting, right? So you've got your mana orb, got your magic thing. Honestly, I would probably just scrap that. Have upgrades. We've got all of these icons here. I would scrap every single one of them. We don't need any of those, I don't think. Not to start off with. Right? This is something that could be progressively disclosed. And I'm sure, because I know this is a talented developer, they clearly know how to make good games. I'm sure they have many plans for this. Once again, this is not a critique of the developer's capacity to act. You always have to do things in an order because time is finite. So this is just, if I were to take it as a project, this is what I would do. And then we've got our upgrades. Frankly, I would move that over here and make it really big. And then we've got all these shadow boxes and stuff. I'd axe those. Once again, display things when the user needs it and not a moment before, unless that is doing a job of communicating something that will happen later on, right? It's a promise of something that may happen. It's not going to be that. It's not going to enhance your narrative or accomplish some sort of emotional impact or be a hook to keep people engaged for longer. Like, it's just not doing anything. It's not accomplishing anything. Let's get rid of it until it can. And then, once they click on this first upgrade, slide it up. And then we can start bringing more of our UI back into the screen. As well, this layer icon feels very strange to me being where it is. It feels like it should be another setting, right? So I would probably move this over to the upgrades or put it underneath the mana or into another corner or something. In fact, I feel like this player could be a natural pair with the search icon, the event log. These are kind of similar things. I believe the search is going to let us search for upgrades and stuff that we've purchased or different actions we can take. That feels like it would pair very naturally with attributes. But because they're so distant, they feel very separate. And that player icon is right next. I mean, it is butting right up against the settings icon. So your brain is naturally going to think some sort of setting. All right, let's do this upgrade. Bind mana to the orb. 25 swirls. Okay, I see the icon repeated over here, and we're getting some nice tooltips. I like these tooltips. They're very informative and thorough. That builds trust for me that this is going to be a game where I'm going to be able to really build something out of it. It's kind of building a promise that there are things you're going to be able to tweak in here. This is not going to be a simple, you now get 5 at a time instead of 1 at a time. It's going to be like, ooh, do I want to tweak my capacity or my rate? Kind of promising implicitly all those different levers. Going to keep people hooked. How much of the UI should rely on previous knowledge of the genre? How much would the developer explain with this UI? Is it a scale, or should you aim for 100% explanation? Those are great questions. So there's a bunch of different thoughts running through my head, and I'll just talk through them all, and maybe there will be something of value for someone in there. There is something in digital product design called Jacob's Law. And it is a truth and also deeply frustrating for designers everywhere. Because what Jacob's Law says is that users spend most of their time on things that are not what you have built. And so don't try and be novel. Follow the expectations that are already established through all of these other forms of interaction. So, for example, if you're doing a first-person shooter, you're going to want WASD and a mouse, right? That is how you play a first-person shooter. You don't want it to be like N is up and then semicolon is turned left and then like delete is up and down arrow is right and then to shoot is like 6 and right. Doesn't make any sense. I mean, obviously it doesn't make any sense, but even if you just shifted the keys over, like now it's I, J, K, and L instead of WASD, it's still gonna really throw people off. They're gonna have a negative experience with it. So Jacob's Law would say you go with what is previously established. Now that can be different depending on what you are actually trying to accomplish. If you're wanting to build the lowest friction introduction into an experience, yeah, you want to follow Jacob's Law to the T. But if you are trying to be different, a really great example of this in games would be something like QWERTY or Octopus. What is it? Oh shoot, that game where you play as that yellow octopus. Octodad, right? The whole point of those games was to have very novel control experiences so that they would be awkward and uncomfortable. Same thing with Heavy Rain, right? Those QTEs that they had were purposefully designed to make your hands hurt so that you could have that emotional draw into the game. But you'll notice that all of those are really intentional. You don't want to go crazy different just to be crazy or rather, you don't want to go crazy different for no good reason. You got to make sure it's really tying into a core experience. And then, should you aim for 100% explanation? Once again, it depends, right? So, if we like map out a journey of our players from, move this up, this over here, so I'm not looking straight down. We map out our players' experiences from extreme delight to extreme frustration. You know, that curve, you may want it to look something like that, right? Always at the top, always looking great. Usually what it ends up looking like in reality, just because we're imperfect people and we build imperfect things, and we build for an infinite variety of people, and they're always going to interpret, is it's going to look a little bit more, you know, like this, and then kind of go down, right? That's a more realistic mapping. This being like, you open the game, and then you click start, and you get your first upgrade, and then you have your first boss, and then you beat the boss, and then you have the next level, right? You can map this out over time through events in the experience. Now, the thing that Jacob's Law helps us do is it helps us avoid this space. What Jacob's Law does not do is build us up to here. No one is going to use something that looks like everything else and say, wow, I am so impressed by this, right? At best, it's bare base model. Another model to kind of conceptualize this is called the Kano model. The Kano model says, on a scale of satisfaction to effort to build, you've got this line here, and this line represents basic expectations. Those basic expectations, if you're going to a hotel, would be things like, I have a bed. It is freshly made. It's comfortable. I have my own private habitation space. I have hot water when I turn the shower on. I have, you know, all these sorts of things. These are basic expectations that if they're not met, it's like, this isn't even a hotel anymore, right? So if we have a game, for example, that crashes or has ridiculous bugs all the time, or that, you know, is causing all sorts of problems for players, or is gouging you for money, many AAA studios, you're missing those basic expectations. That causes an extreme lack of satisfaction, going heavily into frustration. And you'll also notice that they never cross this middle space here for satisfaction. They can only ever get you to, yes, that is what I would expect. That's never going to be positive. It's always just neutral. But they have to be there. You also have this line. Our features. This is where most people live when they're building a product. To learn about these models, should I be researching UX or ludology? Which knowledge field should I look into to learn about these models? So the ones that I'm expressing here, these came from a decade of UX and product. Ludology is going to have its own models. I'm frankly near the beginning of my journey when it comes to really diving into ludology, and what I am observing, kind of so as everyone else, it's a pretty unexplored. Rules of Play was kind of a groundbreaking book because it approached ludology from a very scholarly approach, which sure had been done before, but not really to that extent. So I think there's definitely space in ludology. I have heard that the Ludology podcast is fantastic. You mentioned games for a little bit, so was I for a while, and I've heard great things about especially about the early episodes of ludology. Ownership has changed hands a couple of times. Original hosts have left. I have no idea what state it's in. This is not even a game. There was a game, I don't remember what it was called, that became a fever. Everybody was playing it, but it wasn't even a game. So it's zero agency over what happened in the game. Big and was roulette-based. Everything was chance-based. Zero strategy. Okay. So, this is when we get into interesting discussions of what is a game, right? Rules of play proposes a couple of different definitions. One really interesting one is when people interact with a set of rules in artificial conflict in order to achieve a predetermined outcome. And I think that's a very good mechanical definition. They also say, like, this is not the only definition of a game. It's like trying to write one definition for poker. It's just not going to work. The definition that I like is when individuals engage with an artificial drama in order to solicit a specific outcome or a specific emotional response. So in that case, you know, if it's roulette based and there's no decisions, I think that's not a very good game in many ways. But I think there is artificial drama of, will this roulette land where I want it to? And I think there is a desired emotional response, which is that high when it does land. So to me, it's a game. Coin Masters. Yeah, to me, that's a game. It's not the kind of game that I would probably want to play. It's not something that I would find particularly enriching or valuable in my life. But, you know, that's going to give people a dopamine hit. That's why people go to Vegas all the time and gamble away their life savings, because they're just trying to get that dopamine rush. Yeah, these mobile games, they really tapped into something. And we can mock them, we can ridicule them, we can say these are not good experiences. But at the end of the day, they hit a market that was completely untapped. And that nobody even, when I was growing up, probably yourself as well, the idea of who a gamer was, very different from what it is now. And I don't think that perception would have ever shifted without stuff like this. And as much as I think these are predatory, and I think they are disingenuous in what they are trying to do, I also have to give them a lot of credit because they found a market segment that was ready to be served and completely untouched. You know, not saying they were dumb. They hit gold and had huge celebrities doing commercials. I just don't like their game, but they became rich. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's always going to be positive ways to build, and there's going to be negative ways. And I think a lot of those mobile games have very heavily negative side. Are unfortunately leveraging psychological principles to just destroy. I mean, really, truly. I think it's the most unethical things. Like we complain about AAA dev studio and games getting released that are unfinished and asking for money when they're not ready for it, but compared to the mobile market, they're angels. So we have features, and these can take us to delight, but they usually require a ton of effort, right? And then, after features, this curve. And these are lighters. Delighters are low effort things that people haven't really ever considered that lead to really high emotional response. So, going back to the hotel example, basic expectation, do I have a bed? Feature is, ooh, these have 7,000 count sets and sheets. That is a nice feature. Lighter is the little piece of chocolate on the pillow top. And from that very example, you may be thinking, I kind of think that's a basic expectation. And you're right, because delighters over time shift down to basic expectation. You have to constantly stay on top of it and work very hard on it. It's also a term that's been very heavily misappropriated in the design community. We say delighter, anything. But it's something important to keep an eye on because most people live here in features. You look at so many different games on what they are trying to accomplish. And it's like, we're going to make a beat 'em up brawler. And we have one cool weapon. And we're building the game around that one cool weapon, kind of. That is a feature, right? That is not a delighter. It's going to take a huge amount of effort to make that one gimmick something cool enough to catch people's attention. Cookie Clicker is a great example of something that stormed the market with delight, because this has never been seen before, and it was very low effort to build. Cookie Clicker did not take a long time to construct, but it introduced scale in such a profound way that it really it created an entirely new genre. You see the same thing happen with Vampire Survivor. Not only did they introduce scale and visual spectacle, also delighted in price. You can have all this. Dollars. I saw Asmongold's first video on Vampire Survivors the other day when I was doing some research. His title was, I bought a very expensive game and killed thousands of monsters, right? That delighted. It was a joke because of how cheap it was. That people just, you read comments of people online all the time saying, oh yeah, the way I discovered Vampire Survivors, I saw someone playing it and it looked kind of fun and silly, and then I saw the price tag and I said there's no reason not to get it. Some of the reviews on the DLCs are, yeah, so I basically just throw $3 over to this company whenever they ask me to do it, and it feels good. That's the delighter. That's the low effort thing that brings a lot of joy. Okay, catch up with chat here. Yeah, there is a talk about monetization strategies for mobile. I think it was called whale hunting. Yeah. Explain some of the strategies mobile uses to hook people in. I understand just enough of dopamine reward cycles and their strategies to know it's disgusting, and that is why I am aiming to make PC games with a fixed price tag with no microtransactions, never going into mobile. Vampire Survivors being another example. Exactly. Yep, you beat me to it. Very similar mechanics, slow start and scaling up to absurd power. Yeah, and that was that big delight. Now, I hear you, Rodrigo, on the aversion to that space. This is unsolicited, but I think it's an important thing to discuss as a community, not just as yourself, but something that we as a community really need to have a great discussion about, which is, I'm going to give an example of someone I really heavily respect. His name is Cameron Mall. Cameron Mall is a fantastic product designer and a wonderful thought leader and leader in the design space, with a very high bar for his own personal ethics. He's a very religious person. He shares that religion freely and holds himself to a very high standard of his conduct. That what he's doing really needs to be helping people. And then he got a job as a director of design at Meta. Obviously, that has some ethical complications. A lot of people really railed against him for a long time, saying, Cameron, how on earth can you... By the way, this music is so good. How can you go work for Meta? If you claim you're a religious person, you're trying to, be like Jesus Christ, and you're gonna go work for, like, Satan? How are you doing that? And he said, the only responsible way to change a system is to either tear it down with force from the outside or to try and change it from the inside. So I'm going to try to change it from the inside. The project that he got himself put on was the events section for Facebook. The entire team motto was, let's get people off of Facebook. And so he worked very hard to build the world up somehow. He didn't avoid the space just because it was icky. He pushed it. And I think we need to be very frank as a game developing community about mobile. Because if nobody is building fixed price tag, no microtransaction mobile, that means the 7 billion people on the planet with phones, but no other access to gaming, only have access to predatory business practice. And obviously, I'm not saying everyone now needs to change or jump ship. I'm not planning on building any mobile games. But I think that's a very uncomfortable thing that's healthy to sit with. Say, what do those people deserve? Do those 4 billion people in China that are, like, the mobile space is massive, they deserve to still be held down by predatory businesses? They deserve something better that delivers more than basic expectations. I think they do. It's hard, obviously, because market expectations are different. Hard road. I know anyone who has built a mobile game and tried this strategy would quite possibly laugh at it. But I think it's something powerful. Let me rephrase then, never going into that exploitative monetization strategy. Make it in. I think it's something to consider, you know? There are some really good mobile devs that I love. Night of the Full Moon is a fantastic roguelike deck builder for a fixed price on mobile, as well as Dawncaster. The very similar games, but one is by a Eastern studio, one by a Western studio. So it can exist, but it is hard, and I'm not ignorant to those challenges. Or rather, I'm not ignorant that those challenges exist. I am absolutely ignorant to what the challenges are in these games. I don't know what the answer is. I don't have an answer. I wish I did. But, yeah. All right. Once again, that wasn't necessarily meant to you individually, but just as something that we really need to be considering as a game dev community, especially as indie game devs, because we have a lot more capacity to pivot and make smaller production things. Okay. Let's, boy, where were we? Ha! Right, we're analyzing the UI. Let's jump into the game itself. Let's take our very first action. A full hour and 20 minutes into the game. So infuse orb developed. We get a little low down toast. Oh, hold on. Purchased. Oh, and then we get a loading bar. Developed. Okay. So we're increasing the rate at which our mana grows, and we have now exceeded our max, right? We can no longer buy this. So now implicitly I understand I'm going to find ways to upgrade this. This is not the end. Learn insight. Learn the manifestation glyph that generates understanding, unlocks insight. I have no idea what any of that means. At best, you could say that's once again evoking mystery. At worst, you could say it's just obtuse. I think that's going to depend on every... I'm excited to see where we're... Sorry for derailing you so much. I gotta go work on an app I'm developing. Gonna keep you on the background, so I'll be quiet. Hey, no worries. That's exactly why we're here. The whole reason this stream exists is not for me to build games. The whole reason for this stream to exist is to provide a space where people can build. In fact, ideally, in the future, we're gonna be building teams of people every 6 months that build a game, and we release it for a few bucks on Steam, and then skill set in order to go transition into the video game. This isn't about me. It's not about this product that I'm building. It's something I'm excited about, and I really do. But the purpose of it, these interactions. So thank you for talking. I appreciate you. Let you go get your work done, and wish you the best of luck. Exciting thing. I can't wait to hear how the product you're building develops, and what it is. I'd love to know if there's a place we can follow along and share in the journey. We're gonna learn insight. We got this loading bar, which is clever. It's clever putting that in there. Oh, I also saw it down here in the corner. Active attribute. Attributes you're currently developing. So these are attributes. That's interesting. I think that's neat. But also, it's not labeled as an attribute. And I go up to my event log. This is not labeled as an attribute anywhere. So anyways. So I just saw this thing pop up. And I got a little lost for a second until I saw this glowing button spell book. Learn spell, invalid recipe, learn. Seeing all sorts of buttons. This could use some better some better visual layout. Right now, it's all very floaty, just kind of stuff everywhere, and there's not a tight, implicit understanding of how these things are connected to each other, right? I have played this game a little bit, and I'm pretty confident most people would figure this out fairly quickly, that we're going to click on this icon over here, and it will pop into here, which will then enable this button. That this is a tab. This learn is a tab. Problem is, none of that reads without the rest of the UI. Let's take a look here. So, yeah, I mean, people are probably going to figure this out. They'll experiment, they'll play around, they'll figure it out, right? But it does, if you go back to our journey map, does take down a little bit, right? You're kind of diving into this sort of a territory with people trying to figure it out. There's only so much goodwill you have to spend with someone. So, I have a new tab here, casting. Wow, lots of new stuff getting thrown at me, right? I've got my casting level with this big, visually noisy icon. We've got casting XP with this bar, 1.5 thousand. I have no idea what that is. And then I have this spell, Gather Knowledge. Discover and learn how to use the orb. It's going to cost all of my mana on a 10-second cooldown, but I get 1 knowledge, whatever that means. Oh, and I also have this down here. Use the same thing. Yes, it looks like it. Okay, ooh, I liked that animation. Did you see that? Ooh, is it gonna do that again for me? Let's see if it does that animation again. That was great. Oh, nice, that lightning bolt. I like that a lot. That feels very empowering to me, right? I am casting this lightning ray out, and it's something that incremental games very frequently do. Visual fidelity. That lightning bolt, 100% in the territory of a delighter. It was probably pretty low effort to just spawn a lightning bolt sequence from this section of the UI over to wherever this icon happens to be, and have it play for like a second and a half and then go. But I feel empowered. I feel like I'm casting a spell. That's great. Now we have wizardry. You're starting to recollect yourself and your abilities. That's good text. Once again, we get that mystery. Wait a minute, recollect myself. So I was here before. So there's now a portal in addition to something. History is expanding. It's a wizardry upgrade. Don't have any idea what that means. I'm excited to find out though. Also kind of weird that it has the same icon here and here. Again, that's probably just an early access thing. Purchased. Getting this down here of the attributes corner, but once again, it wasn't labeled as an attribute. Wizardry developed. Oh, I have a new tab, Wizardry. Let's keep gathering our knowledge, and we have wisdom now. We can get more mana, so we can finally start getting these upgrades again. Learn expansion. Learn the manifestation glyph that expands an element. Once again, I have no idea what it means, but the past couple of times I've bought stuff have been like pretty cool, so let's see what this does. Okay, our spell book is glowing. Grab that. Oh, you know what? It costs too much mana to learn. Too much mana to learn. So, again, we start going back to these other upgrades. Seeing what we got. Now we're at 400. Way past where we are. Go back to gathering the knowledge. Buying more wisdom. Upgrading our maximum mana. Ooh, now we have spell book loadout. Learn how to add, move, and remove spells. That is compelling to me as a player. Now, I'm in an incremental game that has loadouts. That implies many choices, right? It's not just what spells are you taking into something, whatever that is. I don't know what it would be right now. I don't know if we're going to start going to dungeons or if we're going to recruit resources in a different way or something entirely different. But I now have the promise there is something more. I'm going to be making an entire subset of decisions. I'm going to want to lock that in and have multiple subsets of those decisions forming a great meta decision. That is compelling. All right, get wisdom, knowledge. You can see our numbers are starting to go up already, right? We can learn our new whirling divination. Powers the ability to divine, increasing the power of all spells. Divining tag, which I believe ours has gather knowledge because it says one basic divining cantrip. I'm assuming that's the tag. I wish it looked more like a tag or were not described as a tag or something. That, and then cast this, and now I got 1.7 knowledge instead. Now I'll get my spellbook loadout. Now I'm starting to get lots of different things I'm upgrading kind of simultaneously. This. More wisdom. We have a higher max mana. We can start infusing our orb to get faster mana regen. Start doing that. And we now have a new wizardry upgrade. We have infused mana, which is also going to upgrade our mana per second. Oh, but it moved out of upgrades and went into the space. That's interesting. I wonder why that is. We have improved wizardry. Advance your recollection of spell casting. Unlocks more wizardry upgrades. That sounds rad. Can't do anything in this learn tab. I think this loadout tab is kind of spent. And I see that I'm gaining experience here, but I don't really conceptualize what that means. I guess it would just make my spells incrementally powerful. So now I'm kind of at this point where I'm starting to feel a little bit down, right? So started off on this kind of cool mystery. We started buying stuff, it was feeling good. Now we're kind of dipping down a little bit because I don't have a clear vision of where I'm supposed to, or where I'm going. Because I have this improved wizardry. For some reason that feels unsatisfactory. It's not quite enough. Like, I'm not really understanding what that's going to do for me to push the game forward, but it's kind of the only thing that I can do, so I guess I'll shoot for it. But I don't have that meaning, right? And it barely feels empowering because I don't even know what it is. It's kind of like just following directions instead of, oh, I understand why I want that. I really want it. And that's a tricky tightrope to balance because you want the mystery, right? That's clearly a core principle of this game's design. Mystery. You don't want to give too much, but you also do need to compel a little. Not forcibly compel, but be compelling. Now we have resilience, improves the passive generation of elemental type resources. Oh, mana. It'll make us regenerate mana, and I guess other things too eventually. We have aptitude, which increases our divining spell power, so that will increase the rate at which we get damage. We have spell advancement, unlocks the ability to level up spells. Okay, that sounds great. Let's shoot for that. We have enough total mana to be able to get that, so let's wait for our gather knowledge to refresh. And every time I have to wait for gather knowledge to refresh and there's nothing else I can do, it's a big bummer for me. I don't fully know how to read that because it is an incremental game, and a certain amount of waiting is expected in an increment. But if you didn't have to wait? Or what if there were something else meaningful you could do while waiting? Traditionally, that's been cookie yourself to do that here. But there's probably something you could do. And I would wager something will open up later that will be something you can. These early stages are kind of annoying. Now, it's also worth noting that when you go down, that doesn't mean that's a bad thing. It just means it's a negative emotion. Negative emotions are not bad. It can be necessary. It's these negative emotions that can make the positive ones feel so much higher. And I think that's something that a lot of AAA studios have been forced into not paying attention to. As this negative emotion is perceived as a risk instead of as a valuable human experience. We saw that in Thomas Was Alone, where I was saying, man, I hate having to move each character over every single time. And then when I realized, wait a minute, I can stack them all on top of each other. And as long as there's just like a straight route through where I don't have to jump, all of a sudden, it blew my mind. Because it's like, everyone goes faster together. By moving together instead of individually, we triple how fast we get through things. And it was a really compelling experience, and it wouldn't have been that powerful if they had designed out that negative experience. So, negative experiences, not bad, just negative. Should be leveraged wisely and intentionally. Okay, novice spells. Increases the amount of knowledge you can use to create a spell, allowing you to create more powerful spells. Amount of glyphs. So like, I have one, so I'll be able to use both of these to make a spell. Sounds pretty cool. Now I'm starting to get like almost Pokemon sort of vibes in a way, like, you know, breeding things together and Monster Rancher type sort of stuff. Let's see here. I'm starting to kind of lose a little bit of that momentum again. We need to get to 50 gather knowledge, which is a lot. And it also requires gather knowledge 1. So like, do I have to level it up? Is that the idea? I'm getting close to leveling it up. Or it will get just a minor amount stronger? Kind of a bummer. It doesn't feel very impactful. Like seeing plus 0.3. Whenever you see plus 0, it's always automatically just kind of a, oh. Even if 0 point anything is going to be a big deal, seeing that plus 0 is an emotional bummer that could be avoided. Again, maybe you don't want to avoid it, but I don't know. I'm feeling a lot of down spots in this early game that I'm pretty sure will be non-existent later on. But how many people are going to be playing till later? And to be fair to the creator of this game, it may be a lot. Right? Like, I love this game. I know a lot of other people do. Wanderbot speaks very highly of it. Did like a 7-part series on it or something. Or I'm sure he got lower view rates than normal because it's not his typical content. But he did it because he was passionate about it. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a thing. Ooh, we got a level up. Ooh, it's gonna cost 20. Then what? It's, oh, gather knowledge went up. We need 10 for this one. So, what does this level even do? If I look without any of the tooltips, saying optimal output level 1 out of 2. I don't really know what that means. Optimal output level for generating spell mastery XP between mana, efficiency, and time efficiency. Oh, okay. So this is saying you can cast your spells at different levels. And you want to cast it at level 1 or 2 in order to be gaining the fastest amount of experience. Okay. That sounds great. I don't really understand that. And then we have upgrade level 0. How many times the spell has been upgraded? Okay, I thought that was going to be how many times we will upgrade it. Because I'm a little confused because now it's 0 and then 1, right? I think what that's saying is the spell is level 1 and has been upgraded 0 times. But that feels very confusing. I don't know how important those numbers are. Maybe they're really important. Then we have, like, if they're really all that important, I think you should just combine upgrade level with level and then subtract all of your requirements by 1 or something, right? Or increase them by 1. All right, so we've got our upgrade. We can upgrade them to turn basic divining and cantrip all to level 0 with plus 0. That is how I feel about it, and it's taken me a long time to kind of try and conceptualize this. I think what it is trying to say is we're going to upgrade this. This is the running total of your upgrade. So I would expect when I click this button now, these numbers will change to what it is. However, if it feels really dumb to click this because I feel like I'm gonna get 0. There we go, we're at level 1. It feels like I got 0, but really I think we got, you know, the other stuff. Keep on getting our divining power up because that knowledge is a really big roadblock for us right now. Also, I really love that we already have 2 different resources, right? We have mana, which generates knowledge. But mana, I'm pretty sure, is going to also do other things. And knowledge is being used in conjunction with mana. So it's not just, you know, cents, dollars, you know, 1, 10, hundreds. It's different, and they interact with each other, have different rules. And that is also a very compelling. Love that. Going back to my ye old days with incremental games, it was always just one value, essentially. you would get money of some sort. And you would spend that money to get upgrades, which you would then get money faster with. But there was no decision making. There's no, oh, but I need knowledge for this other upgrade. Do I really want to spend it on this? Oh, you know, that makes a more compelling experience. That builds empowerment. We are now making choices. We are feeling like we are given the tools to be able to make those. Oh, and we can buy novice spells now. Check that out. We need to get to 15. Oh man, this knowledge gathering is taking a very long time, and I also just noticed this bottom loading bar, orb experience gained through developing any attribute, +1 orb advance. I have no clue what that means. This was not in the version of the game that I played. What would we be leveling our orb with? A couple more to get the novice spells. I'm gonna try and gun for the novice spells instead of trying to build out the economy, because I feel like those spells will probably be big break points to get us somewhere else, right? To increase our earning capacity. We're just gonna be a little uncomfortable and wait for a little bit. And this is one problem that I'm seeing. We have max values, right? Max values can simultaneously free us from that feeling of dependency. Also causes problems in that we now feel we have to be here, right? I don't feel I can set this down for a few minutes, walk away, and come back, and have the resources that I need. I need to be here. I need to be clicking this button. That's very frustrating. There's no other escape, and so now I'm trapped in those small times when we're getting stuff very slowly. If there's no feeling of progress, or it's not very fast, then that is a frustrating experience, because you are being kept in that negative space. There's no way to just escape it further. Let the game run. Okay, so we can use more glyphs now. So supposedly, you can do both of these and learn it. What is this? Learn expand magic. Every point of thaumaturgy increases your mana capacity. Thaumaturgy. We have a new resource now. Lovely, and we got a new particle effect for that resource. Very nice. Very, very nice. Love that. We have a bunch of new upgrades. My goodness, spell output level. Learn how to modify spell output level. We have augment table, adds an augment slot to your table, allowing you to augment your spells, whatever that means. We have a bunch of new upgrades over here. Improves the amount of mastery experience generated per spellcaster. We're going to be leveling faster. We can infuse mana now. That was a big, big velocity improvement, right? And I wonder, how do we communicate? How might we communicate the impact of each upgrade effectively? Because I think that this was the right call, but I don't necessarily know, but I think it was the right call. If I was just improving these attributes, I think it would have been a much slower experience. We'd be brewing things much slower than we are now. But there's not really a good way I could have known that. So how do we communicate that impact better? We talked about that a lot over the stream. It makes me wonder, you know, there's probably ways you can communicate that impact without losing, right? You can say, increase your recollection of spells to massively increase the amount of upgrades available to, or something big hides behind this upgrade, right? There's ways you can be vague about it while also still communicating to the player, hey, like, this is kind of like a big deal, or this is, you know, less big of a deal. So that we can make that decision a little effectively. Because the biggest resource you have in an incremental game, everything else, that is your biggest resource that you're scarce with. Incremental game. Another interesting question I'm coming up with then is, how might we remove scarcity from time? Because that to me is not a compelling gameplay element. That to me is stressful because I already don't have very much time. I don't want to lose time, right? Oh, huh? No. Thank you. That's a special super secret project. Oh, let's go back to casting spells. And once again, this just feels really boring. Maybe it's just because I've been spending so much time talking. Maybe someone else who was going through this fresh would not be having this experience. Boy, does it feel like a bummer. Let's see. Now I'm getting like a lot of options to pursue for my upgrades, and I don't really know what to pick, to be. I don't know what's the most efficient use of my resources. Once again, we've got plus 1% resources gained. That kind of feels like the sort of thing I should just buy a bunch of in bulk, or then trying to invest all of my resources. It feels like if you go into the spell output level, it might be better. Maybe. Where do we change the? Oh, nope. Wait a minute. Hold on. Hold on. Share a cooldown? You could have multiples of the same spell on the loadout bar. I did not know that at all. We have just doubled our knowledge production. Jeez. I mean, with that makes that Whirling Divination spell just seem like hot garbage. Like, plus 70% Divining Spell Power, like, that's cool because it'll apply for the Thaumaturgy as well. But, like, I'm okay taking a little hit on Thaumaturgy to have 100% uptime on doubling my speed for Wizardry, which is far and away the biggest roadblock I'm hitting. I don't know if I'm ever going to put Whirling Divination back into my spellbook again. Man, sakes alive. That is such a big deal. Whoa, raise output level 15. I think we found it. Increases the maximum output level that can be set. What does that mean? What? What? Oh, it's just so painfully slow. Like, thinking of trying to get to 15 knowledge is just so painful when you have to be here, clicking everything. It's just... Ugh. Lot. Like, I don't even know what are the good ways to try and improve it. Because this is a basic divining cantrip, so attunement doesn't help, right? This expansion divining cantrip, which so far as I'm aware, wouldn't count because it doesn't say magic on it. I mean, I know it says it in the title, but it doesn't have that in a tag or anything. I actually don't know what magic resources count for. They're like, can I go to attributes? No. Can I go to search? Magic, maybe? Magic. Resource type. Resources related to wizardry, mana, knowledge. Oh, so it applies to everything. Why do we have tags if we're not going to use them? Saying plus to magic resources gained. I have nowhere on here. Oh, what? Oh. All right. Okay. I get what's happening now, and it has a logic to it, but I don't like it. Okay. So what we're seeing here is the tooltip for the resource. Resource is a magic mental resource. The spell to generate that is a basic divining cantrip. Those are different things. Oh man, it's frustrating. Okay, so I would love to know that the knowledge that we're generating is a magic mental source. If I am going to try to be finding ways to improve the generation of that, then I need a really quick and easy way to tell. Or we could like group these things together. So we have our orb over here and then resource and resource. Like, let's just group these all together with like an icon over here. That's the magic icon, right? Or up here in the middle or whatever, or as the background. I don't know. Something, right? Let's tell people without having to hover over it. Wow. And just like find it. That's very frustrating. Okay. Let's go back. Let's raise our output level. Oh, output level. Massively increases a spell's cost and cooldown for greater power and interesting. So that's probably where we saw that like most efficient leveling stuff, right? Yeah, optimal output level. 2 out of 1. So it's saying you probably want to go back to 1 so that you're not spending all your resources, but we seem to be doing okay on resources. That's not means. Boy. Everyone. I know. This has been a great stream. Everything is, the sky is quite literally falling all around me. I think that's my cue to head out. This was a wonderful 2 hours. I'm thrilled we got 2 hours in today. And I sure appreciate all of you coming in. Having a great time. The wonderful chaos of... So, we'll maybe pick up with Orb of Creation next time, or we might jump into a different incremental game. I think we might just want to do 1 or 2 more incremental games before we start tackling the design conceptually for this circle game. And with that, and a green screen falling into my head, have a great night. We'll see you next time.